Welcome to the 1000 Nights and 1 Night. Now, when it was the 258th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the prince of the true believers said to that merchant, Bring me 50 loads of stuffs, that such as would come from Cairo, and let each one be worth 1,000 dinars, and write on each bale its price, and bring me also a male Abyssinian slave. The merchant did bidding of the caliph, who committed to the slave a basin and ewer of gold, and other presents together with the 50 loads, and wrote a letter to Ala al-Din as from his father Shams al-Din, and said to him, Take these bales, and what else is with them, and go to such and such a quarter wherein dwelleth the provost of the merchants, and say, Where be Ala al-Din Abu al-Shamat, till folk direct thee to his quarter in his house. So the slave took the letter and the goods, and what else, and fared forth on his errand. Such was his case. But as regards Zubadiah's cousin and first husband, he went to her father and said to him, Come, let us go to Ala al-Din and make him divorce the daughter of my uncle. So they set out both together, and when they came to the street in which the house stood, they found 50 he-mules laden with bales of stuffs, and a blackamoor riding on a she-mule. So they said to him, Whose loads are these? He replied, They belong to my lord Ala al-Din Abu al-Shamat, for his father equipped him with merchandise and sent him on a journey to Baghdad city. But the wild Arabs came forth against him, and took his money and goods and all he had. So when the ill news reached his father, he dispatched me to him with these loads in lieu of those he lost, besides a mule laden with 50,000 dinars, a parcel of clothes worth a power of money, a robe of sables, and a basin and ewer of gold. Whereupon the lady's father said, He whom thou seekest is my son-in-law, and I will show thee his house. Meanwhile, Ala al-Din was sitting at home in huge concern, when lo, one knocked at the door, and he said, O Zubaydah, Allah is all-knowing, but I fear thy father has sent me an officer from the Qazi, or the chief of police. Quoth she, Go down and see what it is. So he went down, and opening the door, found his father-in-law, the provost of the merchants, with an Abyssinian slave, dusky complexion, and pleasant of favour, riding on a mule. When the slave saw him, he dismounted and kissed his hands, and Ala al-Din said, What dost thou want? He replied, I am the slave of my lord Ala al-Din Abu al-Shamat, son of Shams al-Din, consul of the merchants for the land of Egypt, who has sent me to him with this charge. Then he gave him the letter, and Ala al-Din, opening it, found written what followeth. Ho, thou my letter, when my friends shall see thee, kiss thou the ground, and buss his sandal shoon. Look thou hie softly, and thou hasten not. My life and rest are in those hands so boon. After hearty salutations and congratulations, and high estimation from Shams al-Din to his son Abu al-Shamat, Know, O my son, that news hath reached me of the slaughter of thy men, and the plunder of thy monies and goods. So I sent thee herewith 50 loads of Egyptian stuffs, together with a suit of clothes, and a robe of sables, and a basin and ewer of gold. Fear thou no evil, and the goods thou hast lost were the ransom of thy life. So regret them not, and may no further grief befall thee. Thy mother and the people of the house are doing well in health and happiness, and all greet thee with abundant greetings. Moreover, O my son, it hath reached me that thou hast married, and by way of intermediary, to the lady Zubaydah the ludist, and they have imposed on thee a marriage settlement of 10,000 dinars. Wherefore I send thee also 50,000 dinars by the slave Salam. Now, when Ala al-Din had made an end of reading the letter, he took possession of the loads, and turning to the provost, said to him, O my father-in-law, take the 10,000 dinars, the marriage settlement for thy daughter Zubaydah, and take also loads of goods, and dispose of them, and thine be the profit. Only return me the cost price. He answered, Nay, by Allah, I will take nothing, and as for thy wife's settlement, do thou settle the matter with her. Then, after the goods had been brought in, they went to Zubaydah and said to her sire, "O my father, whose loads be these?" He said, "These belong to thy husband Ala al-Din." His father had sent him to him instead of those whereof the wild Arabs spoiled him. Moreover, he hath sent him 50,000 dinars with a parcel of clothes, a robe of sables, a she-mule for riding, and a basin and ewer of gold. As for the marriage settlement, that is for thy recking. Thereupon Ala al-Din rose, and opening the money box, gave her her settlement. And the lady's cousin said, "O my uncle, let him divorce to me my wife." But the old man replied, "This may never be now, for the marriage tie is in his hands." Thereupon the young man went out sore afflicted and sadly vexed, and returning home fell sick for his heart and received its death blow. So he presently died. But as for Ala al-Din, after receiving his goods, he went to the bazaar, and buying what meats and drinks he needed, made a banquet as usual against the night, saying to Zubaydah, "See these lying dervishes, they promised us and broke their promises." Quoth she, "Thou art the son of a consul of the merchants, yet was thy hand short of half a dirham. How then should it be with poor dervishes?" Quoth he, "Almighty Allah hath enabled us to do without them, but if they come to us, never again will I open the door to them." She asked, "Why so?" Whenas their coming footsteps brought us good luck, and moreover they put 100 dinars under the prayer carpet for us every night. Perforce must thou open the door to them and let them come in. So when day departed with its light, and in gloom came night, they lighted the wax candles, and he said to her, "Rise, Zubaydah, make us music." And behold, at this moment someone knocked at the door, and she said, "Go and look who is at the door." So we went down and opened it, and seeing the dervishes said, "Oh, fair welcome to the liars, come up." Accordingly they went up with him, and he seated them and brought them the tray of food, and they ate and they drank, and they became merry and mirthful, and presently said to him, "O my lord, our hearts have been troubled for thee. What hath passed between thee and thy father-in-law?" He answered, "Allah compensated us beyond and above our desire." Rejoined they, "By Allah, we were in fear for thee." And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased to say her permitted say. Now, when it was the 259th night, she said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the dervishes thus addressed Ala al-Din. By Allah, we were in fear for thee, and naught kept us from thee but our lack of cash and coin." Quoth he, "Speedy relief hath come to me from my lord, for my father hath sent me 50,000 dinars and 50 loads of stuffs, each load worth 1,000 dinars. Besides a riding mule, a robe of sables, an Abyssinian slave, and a basin and ewer of gold. Moreover, I have made my peace with my father-in-law, and my wife hath become my lawful wife by my paying her settlement. So laud to Allah for that." Presently the Caliph rose to do a necessity, whereupon Ja'far bent him towards Ala al-Din and said, "Look to thy matters, for thou art in the presence of the Commander of the Faithful." Asked he, "How have I failed in good breeding before the Commander of the Faithful, and which of you is he?" Quoth Ja'far, "He who went out but now to make water is the Commander of the Faithful, Harun al-Rashid, and I am the Wazir Ja'far, and this is Masur, the executioner, and this other is Abu Nawas Hassan bin Hani. And now, Ala al-Din, use thy reason, and bethink thee how many days' journey is it between Cairo and Baghdad?" He replied, 45 days' journey. And Ja'far rejoined, "Thy baggage was stolen only 10 days ago. So how could the news have reached thy father, and how could he pack thee up other goods and send them to thee 45 days' journey in 10 days' time?" Quoth Ala al-Din, O my lord, and whence then came they? From the commander of the faithful, replied Ja'afar, of his great affection for thee. As they were speaking, lo, the Caliph entered, and Ala ad-Din, rising, kissed the ground before him and said, Allah keep thee, O Prince of the Faithful, and give thee long life, and may the lieges never lack thy bounty and beneficence. Replied the Caliph, O Ala ad-Din, let Zubaydah play us an air by way of housewarming for thy deliverance. Thereupon she played him on the lute so rare a melody that the very stones shook for glee, and the strings cried out for present ecstasy. O loving one! They spent the night after the merriest fashion, and in the morning the Caliph said to Ala al-Din, Come to the divan tomorrow. He answered, Hearkening and obedience, O Commander of the Faithful. So Allah will, and thou be well, and in good case. On the morrow he took 10 trays, putting on each a costly present, went up with them to the palace, and the Caliph was sitting on the throne, when behold, Ala ad-Din appeared at the door of the divan, repeating these 2 couplets. Honor and glory wait on thee each morn. Thine envier's nose is the dust beset. Ne'er cease thy days to be as white as snow, thy foeman's days to be as black as jet. Welcome, O Ala al-Din, said the Caliph, and he replied, O Commander of the Faithful, the Prophet, whom Allah bless and assain, was wont to accept presents in these 10 trays, with what is on them are my offering to thee. The Caliph accepted his gift, and ordering him a robe of honor, made him provost of the merchants, and gave him a seat in the divan. And as he was sitting, behold, his father-in-law came in, and seeing Ala al-Din seated in his place, and clad in a robe of honor, said to the Caliph, O King of the age, why is this man sitting in my place, and wearing this robe of honor? Quoth the Caliph, I have made him provost of the merchants, for offices are by investiture, and not by perpetuity, and thou art deposed. Answered the merchant, Thou hast done well, O Commander of the Faithful, for he is ours, and one of us. Allah make the best of us the managers of our affairs. How many a little one hath become great. Then the Caliph wrote Ala al-Din a firman of investiture, and gave it to the governor, who gave it to the crier, and the crier made proclamation in the divan, saying, None is provost of the merchants but Ala al-Din Abu Al-Shamat, and his word is to be heard, and he must be obeyed with due respect paid, and if meriteth homage and honor and high degree. Moreover, when the divan broke up, the governor went down with the crier before Ala al-Din, and the crier repeated the proclamation. And they carried Ala al-Din throughout the thoroughfares of Baghdad, making proclamation of his dignity. Next day, Ala al-Din opened a shop for his slave Salim, and set him therein to buy and sell, whilst he himself rode to the palace, and took his place in the Caliph's divan. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 260th night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious King, that Ala al-Din rode to the palace, and took his place in the Caliph's divan. Now, it came to pass one day, when he sat in his stead, as was his wont, behold, one said to the Caliph, O Commander of the Faithful, may thy head survive such as one of the cup companion, for he is gone to the mercy of Allah Almighty, but be thy life prolonged? Quoth the Caliph, Where is Ala al-Din Abu Al-Shamat? So he went up to the Commander of the Faithful, who at once clad him in a splendid dress of honor, and made him his boon companion, appointing him a monthly pay, an allowance of 1,000 dinars. He continued to keep him company till one day, as he sat in the divan, according to his custom, attending with the Caliph, lo and behold, an emir came up with sword and shield in hand, and said, O Commander of the Faithful, may thy head long outlive the head of the 60, for he is dead this day. Whereupon the Caliph ordered Ala al-Din a dress of honor, and made him chief of the 60, in place of the other who had neither wife, nor son, nor daughter. So Ala al-Din laid hands on his estate, and the Caliph said to him, Bury him in the earth, and take all he hath left of wealth, and slaves, and handmaids. Then he shook the handkerchief, and dismissed the divan, whereupon Ala al-Din went forth, attended by Ahmed al-Danaf, captain of the right, and Hassan Shuman, captain of the left, riding at his either stirrup, each with his 40 men. Presently he turned to Hassan Shuman and his men, and said to them, Plead ye for me with the captain Ahmad al-Danaf, that he please to accept me as his son by covenant before Allah. And Ahmad assenting, saying, I and my 40 men will go before thee to the divan every morning. Now after this, Ala al-Din continued that he left the divan, and returning home, dismissed Ahmad al-Danaf and his men, and sat down with his wife Zubaydah the lute player, who lighted the wax candles and went out the room upon an occasion. Suddenly he heard a loud shriek, so he rose up, and running in haste to see what was the matter, found that his wife, who had cried out, she was lying at full length on the ground, and when he put his hand to her breast, he found her dead. Now, her father's house faced that of Ala al-Din, and he heard the shriek, and he came in, and he said, What is the matter, O my lord Ala al-Din? He replied, O my father, may thy head outlive thy daughter Zubaydah. But, O my father, honor to the dead is burying them. So when the morning dawned, they buried her in the earth, and her husband and father condoled with each other and mutually consoled each other. Thus far concerning her, but as regards Ala al-Din, he donned mourning dress and declined the divan, abiding, tearful-eyed and heavy-hearted at home. After a while, the Caliph said to Ja'far, O Wazir, what is the cause of Ala al-Din's absence from the divan? The minister answered, O Commander of the Faithful, he is in mourning for his wife Zubaydah, and is occupied in receiving those who come to console him. And the Caliph said, It behoveth us to pay him a visit of condolence. I hear and I obey, replied Ja'far. So they took horse, the Caliph and the minister and a few attendants, and rode to Ala al-Din's house. And as he was sitting at home, behold, the party came in upon him, whereupon he rose to receive them and kissed the ground before the Caliph, who said to him, Allah make good thy loss to thee. Answered Ala al-Din, May Allah preserve thee to us, O Commander of the Faithful. Then the Caliph said, O Ala al-Din, why hast thou absented thyself from the divan? And he replied, Because of mourning for my wife Zubaydah, O Commander of the Faithful. The Caliph rejoined, Put away grief from thee. Verily she is dead and gone to the mercy of Almighty Allah, and mourning will avail thee nothing. Nope, nothing. But Ala al-Din said, O Commander of the Faithful, I shall never leave mourning for her till I die and they bury me by her side. Quoth the Caliph, In Allah is compensation for every decease, and neither device nor riches can deliver from death. And divinely gifted was he who said, All sons of women, albeit long preserved, are born upon the bulging briar some day. How then shall man joy or taste delight, upon whose cheek shall rest the dust and clay? When the Caliph had made an end of condoling with him, he charged him not to be absent himself from the divan, and returned to his palace. And Ala al-Din, after a last sorrowful night, mounted early in the morning, and riding to the court, kissed the ground before the Commander of the Faithful, who made a movement as if rising from the throne to greet and welcome him, and bade him take his appointed place in the divan, saying, O Ala al-Din, thou art my guest tonight. So presently he carried him into his seraglio, and calling a slave girl called Kut al-Kulub, said to her, Allah al-Din had a wife called Zubaydah, who used to sing to him and solace him of cark and care. But she is gone to the mercy of Almighty Allah, and now I would have thee play him an air upon the lute. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day and ceased saying her permitted say. Now, when it was the 261st night, she said, It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that the Caliph said to the damsel Kut al-Kulub, I would have thee play him upon the lute an air of fashion sweet and rare, that he may be solaced of his cark and care. So she rose and made sweet music, and the Caliph said to Ala al-Din, What sayest thou of this damsel's voice? And he replied, Verily, O Commander of the Faithful, Zubaydah's voice was the finer, but she is skilled in touching the lute cunningly, and her playing would make a rock dance with glee. The Caliph asked, Doth she please thee? And he answered, She doth, O Commander of the Faithful. Whereupon the king said, By the life of my head and the tombs of my forefathers, she is a gift from me to thee, she and her waiting women. Ala al-Din fancied that the Caliph was gesturing with him, but on the morrow the king went into Kut al-Kulub and said to her, I have given thee to Ala al-Din, whereat she rejoiced, for she had seen and loved him. Then the Caliph returned from his seraglio palace to the divan, and calling porters said to him, Set all the goods of Kut al-Kulub and her waiting women in the leader, and carry them to Ala al-Din's home. So they conducted her to the house and showed her into the pavilion, whilst the Caliph sat in the hall of audience till the close of day, when the divan broke up and he retired to his harem. Such was his case. But as regards Kut al-Kulub, when she had taken up her lodging in Ala al-Din's mansion, she and her women, 40 in all, besides the eunuchry, she called 2 of these capstan slaves and said to them, Sit ye on stools, one on the right and another on the left of the door. And when Ala al-Din cometh home, both of you kiss his hands and say to him, Our mistress Kut al-Kulub requesteth thy presence in the pavilion, for the Caliph hath given her to thee, her and her women. They answered, We hear and we obey, and did as they bade them. So when Ala al-Din returned, he found 2 of the Caliph's eunuchs sitting at the door, and was amazed at the matter, and said to himself, Surely this is not my own house, or else what can have happened? Now when the eunuchs saw him, they rose to him, and kissing his hand, said to him, We are of the Caliph's household, and slaves to Kut al-Kulub, who saluteth thee, giving thee to know that the Caliph hath bestowed her on thee and her women, and requesteth thy presence. Quoth Ala al-Din, Say ye to her, Thou art welcome, but so long as thou shalt abide with me, I will not into the pavilion wherein thou art, for what was the master's should not become the man's. And furthermore ask her, What was the sum of thy day's expenditures in the Caliph's palace? So they went in, and they did his errand to her, and she answered, 100 dinars a day. Whereupon quoth he to himself, There was no need for the Caliph to give me Kut al-Kulub, that I should be put to such expense for her, but there is no help for it. So he abode with her a while, and he assigned her daily 100 dinars for her maintenance, till one day he absented himself from the divan, and the Caliph said to Ja'far, O Wazir, I gave not Kut al-Kulub unto Ala al-Din, but that she might console him for his wife. Why then doth he still hold aloof from us? Answered Ja'far, O Commander of the Faithful, he spake sooth who said, Whoso findeth his fare forgetteth his friends. Rejoined the Caliph, Happily he hath not absented himself without excuse, but we will pay him a visit. Now, some days before this, Ala al-Din had said to Ja'far, I complained to the Caliph of my grief and mourning for the loss of my wife Zubaydah, and he gave me Kut al-Kulub. And the minister replied, Except he loved thee, he had not given her to thee. Say, hast thou gone in unto her, O Ala al-Din? And he rejoined, No, by Allah, I know not her length from her breadth. He asked, And why? And he answered, O Wazir, What befitteth the Lord befitteth not the liege. Then the Caliph and Ja'afar disguised themselves and went privily to visit Ala al-Din, but he knew them, and rising to them kissed the hands of the Caliph, who looked at him and saw signs of sorrow in his face. So he said to him, O Ala al-Din, whence cometh this sorrow when I see thee? Hast thou not gone in unto Kut al-Kulub? He replied, O Commander of the Faithful, what befitteth the Lord befitteth not the thrall. No, as yet I have not gone in to visit her, nor do I know her length from her breadth. So pray quit me of her. Quoth the Caliph, I would fain see her and question her of her case. And quoth Ala al-Din, I hear and I obey, O Commander of the Faithful. So the Caliph went in, and Shahrazad perceived the dawn of the day, and ceased saying her permitted say. And so do I cease my tale for the day, until it be morrow.